Today, we become legends.
Hey, my name's Inter, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be a very unscripted video. I don't really have a plan for what I'm going to do here. It's just going to be me kind of talking about the state of warriors and mages and like the meta in general. I'm going to be using the Smite Master website for this. Incredibly useful website. I'm not affiliated with them or anything, but they have a lot of cool stuff on here in terms of like Smite data. So if you want to go check it out, it's smite-master.com. Very useful website that I use all the time to just like kind of check on the health of the meta and stuff like that. And that's basically what this video is going to be. But it is going to have mostly a focus on warriors and mages at the moment, because that's kind of, you know, how the game is. Warriors are trash and mages are invading their role, and warriors are pretty much not seeing play anywhere. But there is some interesting data here that shows, you know, maybe warriors are slightly better than everyone thinks, and maybe mages are slightly worse than everyone thinks, but there's also a lot of data that, you know, corresponds with what everyone thinks as well. So basically what we've got here to start off is the role combinations on Smite Master. This is basically all of the team comps that are played. You can select a certain tier range, you can select a minimum amount of games, and these are all of the comps that are seeing play and then their pick rate and their win rate. At the moment, we just have basically no tier range set, so bronze through grandmasters, all of the games, and we just got a minimum of 100 games, which isn't a great sample size, and we're going to increase that in a second. But yeah, you can see basically here that the top 2 win rate comps have a warrior on them. All of these other ones don't. And the main reason I think that this is the case is because these are very low pick rate. These are 0.09 and 0.2% of games. And so that is a really small sample size. You know, you see here the number 3 win rate comp it has 46,000 games as opposed to 200 or 100. So you generally want to have a larger sample size than just 100 games. We will increase this in a second. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting that the actual top win rate comp, even with this small sample size, doesn't include a mage at all, and actually does include a warrior. And then even the second top win rate comp does include a warrior and has no guardians and no assassins. And so if we increase the sample size to 500 minimum games, we get a more actual like accurate representation. Most of these comps are going to be, you know, at least 0.5% of the meta-ish. And now we can see that in the top, however many this is, the top 8 win rate comps, there's only a single warrior out of, how many would this be? 40 different, like, roles that could be filled. 1 out of 40 is a warrior. This is definitely more reflective of the actual meta once you remove some of the low sample size teams that only have, like, 100 games or something, because that's not really accurate when you have these other comps that have, like, 5,000 games. That's a much better sample size. And yeah, basically we can see here that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 mages and 1 warrior. There's also a good amount of assassins. There's an assassin on every single comp, and some comps have 2 assassins here as well. A little bit of a lack of guardians and hunters as well. It's mostly just being dominated by mages and assassins at the moment, which I think kind of corresponds with how everyone feels about the meta. If we go and have a look at some of the lower win rate comps though, this pretty much changes entirely, and you see a lot more warriors. Guardians just generally aren't seeing play at all. Even in like all of these comps, you're not seeing a lot of guardian play. But yeah, in these lower win rate comps, you're absolutely seeing comps with a single warrior or 2 warriors and much less mages. And actually a lot less assassins as well. Assassins are probably the least represented role here, I think, with only 5 assassins out of 40 in these comps. And given that there's 40 roles here, 8 would be, you know, an average representation. So assassins are definitely underrepresented in these low win rate comps. Mages are just seeing play pretty much everywhere. It doesn't matter what kind of like win rate you're looking at for these. Mages are just everywhere. Mages are just seeing play in pretty much every role at this point. But there's definitely a noticeable trend here in terms of once you get down to the lower win rate comps, you start seeing a lot more warriors and generally a little bit less mages and a lot less assassins as well compared to these top win rate comps. But if we wanted to, you know, if someone's saying this could just be infected by bronze and silver players that don't know how to play the game, we can change this to like diamond plus ranked, for example, and take a look at the data there. And you can see that it's similar, but actually a little bit more warriors are showing up on some of these comps. The top win rate comp remains pretty much the same, except it's a double assassin. There's basically these 2 comps at the top here that both have very high win rates, and the only thing that changes is a mage for an assassin. It's a standard comp, but then just either a mage or an assassin is replacing the warrior. And since we have fewer samples here, we can maybe go back down to 100 games just to get a little bit more of an accurate representation. Again, as you lower the amount of games required, you start to see more like deviations from the actual trend. There's a few more warriors here, but as you go down, you still see that a lot of these bottom win rate comps are ones with 2 warriors or a single warrior, whereas a lot of these higher win rate comps aren't. This is pretty much the only exception, is a double warrior comp here that's only 0.85% of the meta, but does have a positive win rate with 2 warriors on that comp. And finally, let's quickly look at all rank ranges. Minimum of 1500 games, which according to the data is basically around 1% of the meta. So all of these comps will be at least 1% of your games on average. And we can see that it's pretty pretty much the same. There's a single warrior comp here that has a positive win rate with a large sample size. This is 7% of the meta, which is just your mage, warrior, no guardian, so probably like a mage support or a warrior in support, something like that. And yeah, you can see a very similar trend. As soon as you go to page 2 and you start to get to these comps that have a below 50% win rate, you just start seeing warriors popping up everywhere. Guardians similar, but guardians are on a lot of these comps as well. But you can clearly just see that even in the lower win rate comps, mages are just dominating. They're simply being played a lot right now, for good reason. They're very strong, but yeah, you can definitely see that correlation there. There's a single warrior out of 40 in these comps that are basically above 50% win rate. This one's 49.98, but basically the same. And then as you go down to these lower win rate comps, you start seeing ones with single warriors and even ones with double warriors here that are generally winning less than these comps at the front. And we could also look at some gods in general, look at some warriors. So if we just go to roll warrior here, we'll do a minimum games of like 100, because this is for individual gods, not comps, so we might need a smaller sample available here. We'll start off with all ranks and we'll see how it changes when we go into like high rank gameplay. So if we just take a look at the warriors and their win rates, you can see a lot of warriors are really suffering. And this is what I've been saying in my videos for quite a while. There are a few warriors, if we go to like the top win rate ones here, that do really well. Of course, I will preface this by saying that just looking at win rate data like this is not exactly the best way to determine a god's strength. There are plenty of gods that might have a high win rate and aren't that strong, and there are plenty of gods that might have a lower win rate that are strong, for varying different factors like the player playing them and how hard they can be countered in terms of ranked picks and stuff like that. But we can see that there's a few warriors up here that are doing fairly well. Horus is generally a support warrior but can see playing solo as well, and then you've got Odin, Shiva, and Nike, gods that people pretty much don't consider in the meta whatsoever, but they do have a very high win rate and a decently high pick rate. Wukong and Amaterasu and Chak, I guess, are pretty close to a 50% win rate as well, but then it just starts to really fall off, especially this first page. All of these warriors are just having a really rough time. I mean, Vamana's been nerfed an absolute shit ton, and because his ultimate's not broken anymore and his base kit sucks, he's just gonna kind of remain down here. But Achilles, Hercules, Tyr, who was in the meta recently, Cuchulainn, who got some buffs recently, King Arthur, who got some buffs recently, Osiris got some buffs recently, and it's clearly just not enough. They're just being pushed out of the role by a lot of mages. But we can change the tiers a little bit. We'll go up to Diamond Plus only. I think 100 games should still be a large enough sample size to get all of the warriors on here. And you can see that things change up slightly. We do get to page 2 here, and we see that starting with Wukong, there's actually quite a few warriors that are above 50% win rate. We've got a few extra ones in here now. Amaterasu's win rate goes up, Wukong's win rate goes up, so does Chak. And then Guan goes up massively. Guan was struggling a lot in all ranks, but in these Diamond to Grandmaster games, he's actually having a much better time. But even in the high ranks, you've still got these issues of, you know, these warriors down here that haven't really changed. Most of these are pretty much the same as in all ranks, except switching positions a little bit. And these are the warriors that just haven't seen play in, like, pretty much the entire season. I mean, not Hercules. Hercules has been seeing a lot of play, but he's just fallen off immensely. But a lot of these warriors just haven't seen play in, like, months or even years at this point. And then if we go to the mages, we'll have a look at that as well. Expand the thing to all ranks. We can see that Nox is having a terrible time, as always. Nox generally has a very low win rate, even though she is actually quite a strong god. She's just difficult to play, and you need a kind of certain comp to make her work really well. And then if we go towards the more high win rate stuff, you can generally see a lot of the solo mages up here, so like Poseidon, Apwash, Hades, and then you've got like Nuar, Zeus, Kukulkan, a lot of these gods that people generally consider quite bad, especially Nuar and Zeus. Kukulkan has been seeing a lot of play, and people kind of respect him a lot more as a pick in this meta, but you can see a lot of these mages that, you know, like Anubis, even Afro to a certain extent, a lot of people don't think they're very strong and they have high win rates. That's just because, as I mentioned, you can't use win rate as the sole statistic in terms of how strong a god actually is. There's many other factors that go into it, but yeah, you can see that mages, they're not completely dominating in every aspect. You got to get to around page 3 to actually find some mages with an above 50% win rate. That kind of starts with Vulcan, and then you've got like about 2 more pages also of mages. So in general, mage win rates are actually pretty balanced overall. You know, the 50-50 point is actually about in the middle of the mages. So there are some that are doing quite badly, and then there are some that are doing amazingly. But if we change this up to Diamond to Grandmasters, we can probably get a slightly more accurate sample of what's actually good, rather than looking at the entire meta, because we all know what happens in bronze and silver is not really relevant to what is actually strong in the game. You know, you can make anything work in bronze and silver. You can make anything work in Grandmasters as well, but to a larger extent with the lower ranks. But ultimately, it doesn't really change too much in terms of the win rates. You know, you can see that Kukulkan, Poseidon, Hades, Apash are still up here. Discordia and Afro get a slight win rate bump as well, but most of these gods that you can see up at the top are pretty much the same. The bottom is mostly the same as well, but you do have a lot of gods down here that are considered really strong, like Nox. Well, not really strong for Nox maybe, but strong. And then you've got like Ao Kuang and Maman Brigitte that you can see have very high pick ban rates, but are actually quite low win rate. And that is mainly because these two are really frustrating to play against, and if played well, they can absolutely solo carry a game, so it's understandable why people want to ban these gods. But yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about in this video. It's sort of a follow-up to a similar video that I made a little while back in this season when Warriors were in a similarly bad spot, and it just hasn't really changed. There's still, like, if you look at the 1,000 game sample size for, like, the very top ranks of the game, you don't get many comps here, obviously, because you're omitting a lot of, like, comps that don't get played regularly. But even here, you can see that, like, at the pinnacle of Smite with a large sample size, you're still only seeing 2 warriors out of 25 here. 2 out of 25 is definitely highly underrepresented. They should have 5 here instead of 2. Guardians a little bit underrepresented as well. Assassins slightly over. Hunters exactly where they should be. And then mages are just sweeping up all of that like lack of presence from the tank roles of Guardians and Warriors. Guardians and Warriors combined make up essentially 1 class worth of the meta of what they should be. And mages essentially make up, how many is this? 4, 9, almost twice as represented as they should be if we had a balanced meta. And then, of course, if we sort these by win rate, you can see that, like, the top 2 win rate comps in the game that are highly picked don't include a single warrior whatsoever. And the bottom win rate comp that is quite a bit below most of the rest of them has a warrior on it. Again, I don't want to spend too much time on this. This is more so just an unscripted video that I wanted to bring to you guys, because I think this data on Smite Master is really interesting, and it can be quite insightful in terms of how the meta is developing and stuff like that. Definitely let me know your thoughts down below, though. You know, do you agree that Warriors really need some help, or do you think the mage solo thing is all overblown and stuff like that? I'll be interested to read the comments, because it's a very interesting spot that we're in with Smite right now, leading up to Worlds, and hopefully there will be some changes to make Warriors more viable in the future. But yeah, hopefully you guys like this. Let me know if you enjoy these unscripted style of videos where I'm kind of just going over some of my thoughts on like the meta and stuff like that. I think it's very interesting. So hopefully you guys did enjoy, and I will catch you guys in another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.